Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching our ISEP pre-departure orientation for South Korea. My name is Rachel Brown, and I'll be presenting our information today. We're going to go over culture and daily life first. Then we're going to talk about academic matters, health and safety, give some reminders on things you should do before you go, and then also tips on keeping in touch with ISEP during your program. At any point, you can stop the presentation to look over our slides if you would like. Our presentation should be about 30 minutes long. So just to get started, South Korea is a peninsula with a population of more than 50 million people. There are many mountains on the peninsula. It's surrounded by the sea, but there are also a lot of urban developments, such as Seoul, the capital. Overall, the climate is temperate. It's very warm. The summers can be pretty humid, but they also have cold and dry winters. Overall, it's a democratic country, and it's also a very homogeneous country with a rapidly globalizing society, and only a very small percent of the population isn't native Korean. There's no national religion, however, there is a considerable Buddhist and Christian following. In terms of the culture, all Koreans speak the Korean language, and they also know the Hangul alphabet, which has affinities to Japanese and Chinese loanwords. But then English literacy also continues to be on the rise for many people living there. Confucianism dominates the philosophical and political thought there. So, this idea of respecting other people, honoring your elders, and also saving face when you're in communication with people, especially in public. Family relations are also an important part of Korean culture as well. And patriarchal values are pretty enrooted in the culture, but a lot of things are changing, especially with new progressive policies that are in conversation right now. The generational gap is also pretty big just as a result from globalization. So you might find that there are different attitudes people have on campus versus maybe older generations that you meet around the city. Overall, in South Korea, many people are very hardworking and industrious. Hierarchical attitudes prevail. So this idea of if somebody is higher than you, like they are your boss or they're older than you, that will impact the way that you address them, and it impacts interpersonal interactions all the time. Many Koreans work more than a typical 9 to 5 job, and so often rush hour extends into 6 p.m. or it may even start earlier than 9 a.m. So keep that in mind if you're going to be taking the subway across the city too. When they aren't working, Koreans love to spend time with their family and friends, of course. And because of this very busy schedule many people have, they love to stay out after work to let off stress. And so you might hear people say or use the word cha to talk about doing different rounds of activities after work. They may do the first cha will be drinking, and then maybe after that they will go for a karaoke, or and then they'll go to a bar again. You may see that happen. But overall, Koreans love to preserve community and peace. It's one of the most important aspects of their culture. In terms of interpersonal relationships, non-Koreans are connected or collectively referred to as foreigners. So this would be 외국인 in Korean, and this doesn't inherently have any negative connotations. It's just the way for Koreans to differentiate those who were born and raised in the peninsula and those who are not and who are not ethnically Korean. So if you hear that term again, there are no negative connotations about it, and it really just depends on the context in which it's being used. Korea has many polite grammar and vocabulary devices to indicate respect to others. So there's many different levels of the Korean language, but most commonly you're going to hear people speak their sentences and end it with yo, which is the most polite way to address people if you're not too sure who is older and you're just meeting someone for the first time, for example. Then also, you'll hear different people as they get closer, they'll refer to each other with different markers at the end of their name to represent whether someone's older or younger than them, and also depending on gender too. So, for example, if you are referring to somebody who's older than you and identifies as a male, if you are a male yourself, you may call them hyung, or if you are female, you may call them oppa. And so there are different words that you may need to use. And then also the she ending, which you may see people utilize if they are, again, to either on the same level or they are talking to a stranger, you may hear them use their name and she. But in terms of other recommendations, we do recommend remembering trying to bow slightly if you are personally meeting somebody for the first time. May also remembering to hand and receive objects to others by using either two hands or using your right arm and placing your left arm under your elbow. And then strangers tend not to converse much with other strangers in public in the subway or elevator. So definitely be mindful of that if you are on the train or you're out in public. In terms of housing, Seoul and other big cities are very densely packed. So a lot of living spaces are going to be narrow. So this is just a heads up. Most local South Korean students live at home during university, or they do live on the university dorms if they are coming from far away. But it's not surprising to meet somebody who's actually still living with their parents. In terms of general shared living house rules, these rules definitely differ depending on where you are staying, but these are just general tips to keep in mind. So there may be central heating and air in your dormitory, so be mindful of your consumption if this applies to you. It applies to you or your dormitory. Definitely expect curfews and noise restrictions, especially if you're going to be staying in a dormitory. Trash has to be separated very carefully in Korea. It's by law. You will go and you'll see that there are many different categories for when you're throwing your trash out. So please be very mindful of those different categories because you can be fined for ignoring those rules. And if you have questions about this, you can talk to your host ISEP coordinator too. There may be gender regulations and rules for different genders to not go to different floors. So be mindful of if that is a rule at your host institution, but remember that you can always connect with fellow students in other common areas as well. So either in the kitchen area or study spaces or outside of the dormitory too. But just remember to read your announcement from your host university so you understand what your housing expectations are. In terms of meals, South Korean cuisine is very flavorful and diverse. You'll see many dishes mix fresh vegetables. They also have pickled vegetables like kimchi, eggs, and cooked meats. So if you have any dietary restrictions, it's very important to learn how to express them in Korean beforehand and know how to let your server know before you start dining. Some foods can be pretty spicy and might use what's called gochujang or gochujang paste, which is a very red paste that can be kind of spicy. So if you see foods using that, just be mindful of it. There are a lot of delivery options in Korea, but if you want to utilize that, you are typically going to have to get a Korean SIM card or number. So if you have questions on getting a SIM card, please feel free to reach out to me, or you can reach out to your host ISEP coordinator after orientation. Many non-Korean cuisines are available throughout the city, such as American food, French, Japanese food, halal food. So it's not too hard to find those types of cuisines if you are craving it. And then if you're an ISEP exchange student, you will be receiving a meal stipend as your guaranteed meal benefit. So please check your ISEP acceptance package for details about how much that is so you can be able to budget accordingly. Just some other reminders for meals. It's considered impolite to point your chopsticks or leave them sticking out of your bowl, so please be mindful of that. You are going to be given chopsticks too, but if you do need a fork, you can always ask. It's not rude to ask for one, and most restaurants should be completely fine with giving you one. Sharing food is expected for a lot of different meals, so don't be surprised if you see a really, really big dish, but then sharing plates with it. So it's expected for you to cut your food and share it with each other. Cooking and grilling your own food is very popular in Korea and is one really fun cultural aspect that we definitely encourage you to participate in and enjoy while you are there. And there's no need to tip. That is not part of the culture there. And just as a reminder too, there are so many convenience stores, especially in the bigger cities. They're super common. So there's places like GS25, CU, 7-Eleven. So if you're looking for ways to budget or a quick bite to eat on your way to classes, definitely look for these convenience stores because you will find a lot there that you can eat. In terms of technology in South Korea, so there are reloadable cash cards that are used throughout most of the cities that you can typically get at convenience stores. So we recommend looking into getting one where you can reload it and you can use it for things like the subway and the bus. And we'll get into that more in a second. Google and Apple location services are not typically used in South Korea. So if you're going to try and use those apps you like to use on your phone, please don't be surprised if they don't work too well. And again, too, we'll give into some suggestions on what you can download, especially if you're trying to navigate in a later slide. You should unlock your phone to get access to a local SIM card that can be installed in Korea, or you can also purchase this in advance in some cases. We have some recommendations listed here, such as Aralo, eSIM Korea, and Trazy. So we recommend looking into that if you want to get that set up. Korea also uses Type C and Type F plugs. So these are the plugs you see here on the slide. So we recommend getting adapters well in advance. Get multiple adapters so that you can be able to use other appliances or use your charger, for example. And then also get KakaoTalk. KakaoTalk is a free messaging service that locals use. Virtually everybody in Korea uses it. So we recommend downloading and making an account so that you can be able to save people's accounts and chat with them. In terms of finances in South Korea, so the currency is the South Korean won. 1,000 Korean won is about the same as 86 US cents. And so currency exchange booths, there's many in larger cities too if you want to exchange your money. And then there's also a lot in main tourist areas. So if you're worried about your finances and having cash on you, do not panic. There are places in the airport and also many places around the city that you can be able to exchange your money. Banks are usually open on Monday to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., a little bit before typical business hours. And there are ATMs throughout the country in many places, such as convenience stores. They're even in the subway before you go through the terminal, and then also malls as well. Typically, Visa and MasterCard are accepted, but you just want to check to see if there are any high surcharges depending on which card you're using, because you'll be using it in a foreign country. But if you have a Visa or MasterCard and you're going to most stores, that you can typically utilize them there. Students who are going to have to create a bank account for their stipend, you also can apply for a bank card. So in many cases, so you want to talk to your host ISEP coordinator for assistance with that. Again, to the charge cards, like we mentioned before, we recommend getting one when you go to the convenience store so you can be able to reload money quickly when you have to go on the subway. You can also research monthly public transportation passes, such as the Climate Card, which can be a good way to get discounts as you use public transportation around Korea. So definitely look into that and then look into getting one when you're there. But just as a reminder, markets don't usually accept card payments. So please make sure that you carry cash if you're going to go to places like Gwajang Market or other locations, because they may not have card readers there. In terms of transportation in South Korea, as a reminder, we recommend that you do not rely on Google Maps. Please download things like Naver Map or Kakao Map. Instead, they have English interfaces as well. So those work way better, especially in places like Seoul. There's the KTX train system or the SRT system. These are great ways to visit major cities. They're very fast. And so if you want to go somewhere like Busan, we recommend looking into getting tickets. It's relatively easy to get one to get to those major cities. Intercity buses, they do exist, but they can take twice as long in comparison to the KTX or the SRT, but they are half as expensive. So this can be a good way to save money and travel and visit other cities if you'd like to. As you may know, they're in South Korea, they have one of the best subway systems in the world. So we recommend looking into get a T-Money card, which is a similar type of card that is reloadable that you can get in the convenience stores. And then also recommend downloading apps like Smarter Subway as a good way to navigate through the really convenient subway system that Seoul has. Taxis are abundant, but they also can be expensive depending on where you're going. So that's just something to keep in mind. And we recommend utilizing public transportation as much as you can while you're on your program. But if you have to use a taxi, usually you can just show the address and type it out on your phone and show it to the person, and they should be able to help navigate where you need to go. And Uber and Kakao T are pretty good ride sharing apps that you can utilize while you're in the city. In terms of sports and leisure, so there's a lot of great things you can do in South Korea, of course. So here are some ideas too, if you're wondering how to get active and wondering what to do to enjoy your time there. So baseball and football or soccer are the most popular Korean sports. Kite flying is a national pastime there. There's cycling, hiking, and running, which are also popular. And just overall, there's a very active culture, and you'll see many people are just always up and about, especially during lunchtime. A lot of people love to just go on walks and talk with their coworkers. So you'll see a lot of times the parks are very busy during those hours. People do tend to dress up when they're going up around town. So even in college towns, you might not see people, throwing on sweatpants and a hoodie and going to the convenience store. A lot of people are still going to try and be somewhat presentable. So don't be too surprised if you see a lot of people dressing really nicely no matter where they're going. There's also a big drinking and smoking culture in Korea, especially in very urban locations. So you may see a lot of people engaging in that, obviously at bars, but then also outside of restaurants or shops. But yes, there's so many shops around, but we recommend remembering to buy smart and don't overdo it too much, and be mindful of how much luggage space you're going to have when you're coming back, and just consuming very consciously while you're on your program. Here, this is a slide for the major holidays and vacation periods throughout the year. I won't go through all these holidays, but you can pause the presentation so you can take a look at some important days that may be coming up. You also may have class that is canceled on these days. So you can take a look at these and keep some of these holidays and vacation periods in mind. And we recommend looking for cool events to do in your area when these holidays are happening. The one thing we wanted to touch on also is about culture shock. So culture shock is definitely real, and definitely something that can also happen at any time during your study abroad period. How we like to describe it here as ISEP is there's a honeymoon period where you're coming on your program in the first few weeks, everything is so new. So you're trying so many new foods, you're meeting new people, you're taking all the trips you can to have so much fun. But then after you go through that and you start taking your classes and getting ready for things like midterms, it can feel a little bit overwhelming realizing that you're in a new space and you have to adapt to a routine now. So that can kind of lead to what we call the stress stages for your program. It can feel pretty difficult, admittedly speaking. So we do have a culture shock handout that you should have received via email from your student services officer for tips on how to deal with this. But just some things I wanted to keep in mind or mention too. For example, in Korea, people may comment on something they notice about your appearance upon first meeting. And this is especially common with people who are older in Korea. And again, too, that's just how they greet each other and just the way society sort of is in Korea. So, but obviously many students are very surprised about that because they come from cultures where you're not expected to bring up appearances, especially early in the conversation. Some people also might not say sorry if they bump into you on the street, just because overall Korea is a very non-confrontational society. So unless there's a major problem, or even if there is, many people don't want to get into those type of altercations in the middle of the public. So our advice is to just think to yourself whenever you have these moments where you're not really understanding what's going on in your culture, to remember that it's not right or wrong, it's just different. You are experiencing something for the new for the very first time, and it's going to take time to really understand it. Also remember that no one can change or influence an entire culture overnight, and that what you are going to be experiencing is learned behavior by other people who have lived in that culture for a very long time. So take every situation you have as it, and take everything, day by day as you go through it, and try to think that you about the future of your semester and the other things that are going to be coming, even when you have a really tough day once. And then also we recommend journaling your experience. Reread your journal entry later too after you write things down, and think about what you may have learned since then. Your perception about one cultural aspect may change after you realize what it means in the culture of the society that you're in. So these are just some tips on when you're dealing with culture shock. And all this aside, if you have questions on something that happens on your program, please do not be afraid to reach out to your student services officer. Talk to me, talk to your host ISEP coordinator as well, so we can kind of work through that situation with you if you want. And here we have listed reflection from past ICEP students. So again, you can pause and you can read about some of the advice that past ICEP students have given on how to deal with things like culture shock and how to make the most of your ICEP program. So next we're going to get into academics. So we also have this information in the education section of the ICEP country handbook, but we're going to go into it in slightly more detail here. So in Korea, one academic year has 2 semesters. The first semester is from March to June, and that's considered the spring. And then the second semester is September to December. So in some cases, this might be flipped from your academic year calendar. There are usually 2 larger vacation periods in the summer from July to August, and in the winter from December to February. It's not common for universities in Korea to have extended spring breaks, for example. And approximately 30% of courses are taught in English at most major institutions, but obviously this amount can vary, especially depending on department. But many students love to take classes in English, but also aside from also taking classes in Korean for their own professional advancement. And this is the case for incoming exchange students and also local students as well. In terms of academics and the registration process, so course registration typically happens online. So please, please, please read your registration guides that you receive from your host ICEP University. You want to keep note of which departments have competitive enrollment, because there are some, for example, like business, which are very popular and may have some competitive spots. Or there are some fields of study that are just completely restricted to ICEP exchange students. So you just want to be mindful of that. So always have a backup plan ready aside from your ideal course plan that you are going to try for. Also check your ICEP pre-departure information tab for information about pre-registration steps, whether that's going to be online or offline, for example, information for dates, and then also forms you might have to complete in order to have a successful registration. But also check with your host university about the add drop period, because most universities in Korea do have one shortly after like the first week of classes. So keep in mind what that period is. If you do get to class and feel like something is not a good fit, there's usually always time to be able to make those adjustments. In terms of campus life, for the most part, the higher education system is modeled after American and Westernized modes of teaching. So there's lecture-based classes, seminars, and labs. So there's going to be popular core classes that may have hundreds of students, and then there are going to be some that may have closer to 20 or 30 students, and those are major courses or more specialized classes. Some classes also might have quotas for exchange student enrollment, so you might find that they're even more competitive for you to enroll into. So one thing we also want to remind you is to have pay strict attention to rules and regulations. So please expect absentee policies. Professors in Korea are usually very serious about this. So in order to understand those policies and also make a good impression with your professors, we recommend that you introduce yourself to your professors at the beginning as an exchange student and mention that you're from your home country, and just be very proactive with understanding their expectations so you can get off on the right foot. Some professors might have a more hands-off approach. So remember to let your professors know directly if you need help, and don't be afraid to establish that with them, because a lot of times they may not know that you're struggling, even if you don't do well on a test or an assignment. You might have to actually verbally tell them that. But also write to your ICEP coordinator and an academic advisor for general questions you have, or if you're having any trouble contacting a professor, or if you feel like there's communication barrier happening, please reach out to us for help so we can be able to assist you. And just for other details about this, you can find this in your country handbook under the education system section. In terms of other campus life, descriptions too. So orientation is typically very large event on campus and involves international students, but also incoming students too, local students. It's very normal for students to dress up for class, kind of similar to what we were talking before, but it definitely depends on the campus. But don't be surprised if people, again, are not wearing hoodies or sweatpants going to class. Students tend to socialize more outside of the classroom. So while students are in class, they may not talk too much even before the professor gets there. They may be a bit more quiet, but students love to study outside of class or hang out. So that's a great way to meet with locals too. And there are also really big festival cultures at some universities in Korea as well, especially in the spring. So this can include events that have live DJs, celebrity appearances like K-pop idols, and then also student-run booths or events like student-run bars too, and activities on campus. So definitely keep an eye out if you want to engage in your community or also meet other local students. But also we recommend checking your international office bulletin boards for cultural exchange programs because there are so many events that are going on that you may not realize that's being held by the international office or a buddy program. So definitely keep an eye out if you're wondering what else you can do to learn more about your institution. In terms of grades, exams and credits, you are likely going to be enrolled in 3 to 5 classes per term. This is going to be different if you're going to be a summer student. That may vary, but if you're going for the semester, that's a typical course load in Korea. Most courses are going to be 3 credits or 3 Korean credits. Some studio classes are going to be more, so they may have 6 credits per class. It just depends on the type of class it is. And then 1 credit usually is about 15 or 16 hours of class work. So we recommend a ratio of 3 Korean credits to 3 US credits, 6 ECTS credits if your university uses that system, and then 12 UK credits. But at the end of the day, you are going to have to get your credits approved by your home university, and you're responsible for making sure that you enroll in sufficient credits as determined by your home institution. So any questions about credit transfer, you want to talk to your academic advisors on your home university campus. And just further on that, so there's a huge emphasis that's placed on midterm and final exams in South Korea, or like project grades as well. So you may find that there's not too many assignments in between these exams to really make up your grade. So it's very important to make sure that you're studying and treating the midterms and finals very seriously. Grades are usually graded from A to F scale, with A being the highest. And just wanted to remind you that if you have any questions or need help with courses, take initiative and ask your professor for resources and help. We recommend, setting up study groups with other students, other ICEP students too. And you can utilize the ICEP Connect form that you received to be able to meet with other ICEP students who are also on the same program as you. So don't be afraid to reach out when you need help. That is the biggest thing we want you to take away with that. Next, we're going to very briefly go over health and safety resources. So we do have the full health and safety presentation, which you also should have received from us or will receive soon. So we aren't going to go super in detail, but just as a reminder, our ICEP emergency line is 1-301-681-2388. Please save this line. It's a 24-hour line where you can be put in touch with someone who can assist you. And this line should be used with very urgent health and safety matters. Otherwise, if you need to reach out to somebody, you can go to your ICEP dashboard to find your home ICEP coordinator, your student services officer, and your host ICEP coordinator. Then as a reminder, you are required to enroll in insurance with ICEP through our ICEP Health and Safety Program. You have health insurance through CISI is what we call it. You also have travel assistance, evacuation and repatriation insurance with AXA assistance. And AXA assistance can also help you find a provider, for example, while you are in Korea, say you have medication that needs to be refilled, you can utilize AXA assistance for that. So this also covers you no matter where you go in the country. And also if you decide to travel outside of Korea while on your program, it will also extend to you there as well. So please just check the health and safety section of your ICEP dashboard, review your CISI policy brochure that you received when you enroll, and download the My CISI app on your phone so you can see all the features that you can utilize as an ICEP student. There's also more information on our ICEP website too. In terms of health and safety in South Korea, we recommend that you familiarize yourself with the emergency contact information in your ISEP dashboard and add those contacts to your phone. And this is an example of what it's going to look like when you go to that page. In terms of emergencies in South Korea, in terms of the numbers that you should remember, for crime and police, it's 112. For fire and medical, it's 119. For information services, it's 114. So please make sure that you're keeping that in mind. Overall, though, Korea is one of the safest countries in the world, especially Seoul and other big cities are pretty walkable at night, but you obviously should be aware of your surroundings and practice common safety wherever you go. Consider calling a taxi if you're going to be traveling around late so you're not having to use public transportation. And also remember to print and carry your health insurance ID cards in your wallet at all times in case you need to utilize the services from the ISEP Health and Safety Program. You should save all medication and medical documentation and receipts because the ISEP Health and Safety Program can cover most medical costs above the $50 deductible. Next, we're going to quickly go over some packing tips. So in South Korea, the weather definitely fluctuates throughout the year. In the winter, it is cold, but it also is sunny too at the same time. In the summer, it can be hot, cloudy, and very humid. And then in the spring and autumn, they're pretty pleasant, but they're also very short periods in the year. So you should really pack clothes for all types of weather while you're in South Korea because it can also be really hot one day and then get a little bit cooler. We also recommend bringing things like cardigans because if the AC is blasting because it's the end of summer, it can be really cold in buildings. So just remember to pack layers, but then also remember you can purchase clothes while you're in Korea, so don't overpack. In terms of toiletries, one thing to keep in mind is that some products like toothpaste, shampoo, and deodorant, they may all have different chemical makeups than what you're used to. Especially what I always remind students is that deodorant, there's not a lot of deodorant in Korea, and if there is, it's not the same as it might be in your home country. So that might be something you want to stock up on. So think about that and think about what products you absolutely need in order to keep your own personal health. Medications, you may need a permit to bring certain medications. Some of them are regulated in Korea, and you want to check the health and safety section of the ISEP country handbook for more details about this. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your student services officer. We can help you with that. And remember to leave space for souvenirs. Some students love to shop so much that they forget that they want to keep souvenirs and keep that space in their luggage. So please keep that in mind. And remember to check your pre-departure information in your ISEP dashboard to check if you need to bring sheets or towels, because if you do need to bring them with you, it may actually be better to just buy them in a nearby supermarket. So you want to look into that and see what you need to do. Lastly, we just want to go over this page about reviewing your resources, or the slide about reviewing your resources. As a reminder, there's so much information that we post on our website that can help you during this pre-departure stage. So remember your ISEP country handbook, your ISEP acceptance package, your pre-departure information and health and safety information. That's all can be found in your ISEP dashboard. And then we also have a Before You Go webpage on our ISEP website that has information about traveling, finances, and medications. We also have a While You're Abroad webpage that's important to remember because we talk about things like culture shock, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility abroad, and also health, safety, and risk management too. So remember these resources, and also remember to check the announcements from your host, ISEP University. Check the spam and junk folders. It's your responsibility to check that to make sure that announcements are not going to those folders, and to make sure that you're reading them so you know what you need to do. But lastly, we just wanted to give you some reminders on staying in touch while you're on your program. Remember, before you leave, you want to talk to your home university, but also your family too, and your friends about how you're going to stay in touch with them, and whether you're going to use like a specific app like WhatsApp or Messenger or something like that. And remember to contact your family upon your arrival. Some students forget because they're so excited, they're so nervous that they forget to tell them that they actually made it safe. So please make sure you contact your family. And then lastly, we just want to plug these different ways that you can connect with ICEP students and also share your story while you're abroad. We have TikTok, Instagram, we have a Facebook page too, and then you can also follow us on LinkedIn. So for TikTok and Instagram, our handle is just ICEP Study Abroad too. So feel free to tag us in any photos or any videos you have that you want to share while you're abroad. But yeah, that's it for our presentation today. Thank you so much for listening. Safe travels too. And remember to check your ICEP dashboard for my information if you have any questions about this presentation today. But stay in touch and thank you.